Hello, my name is Patrick Wold, and for Professor Sung-Ho Ha's A477 senior seminar class, I decided to write on Benjamin Franklin, Diplomat to France. I chose this topic because I have a lot of interest in learning about France, its culture, and its history, and since this class is based on mainly U.S. history, I figured that was a good way to tie in both topics. So let's begin. The Revolutionary War started in 1775 with shots fired at Lexington and Concord. The reason why the 13 colonies wanted independence from Great Britain were numerous. The main reasons were because the British Crown was taxing the colonists without allowing them proper representation in British Parliament. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence from Great Britain was signed by many of the American founding fathers, including Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1706. He is famous for his scientific work, but most importantly his political work and being a founding father of the United States of America. Being a Freemason, as well as a skilled diplomat, are reasons how Benjamin Franklin helped win the Revolutionary War. His work as a Freemason, one of the reasons that made him a good candidate to be diplomat to France, was that Franklin joined the Freemason Society in the year 1730. This was important because many of the founding fathers of the United States were Freemasons. In 1743, Franklin became Grand Master of Pennsylvania, the leader of the Pennsylvania Masonic Lodge. His work as a Freemason would eventually help him on his diplomatic mission to France. The Lodge of the Nine Sisters. Benjamin Franklin spent time in the lodge when he was in France, which was important because the Lodge of the Nine Sisters members believed in enlightened ideals that correlated with the American Revolutionary War. So his work as a Freemason would eventually help him when he did in fact go to Paris and work with the Masonic lodges there. So Franklin did do many trips to England to be representative for the colonies at the time. In fact, on February 3rd of 1757, Franklin was asked by the Pennsylvania Assembly to be an agent of the Pennsylvania Assembly and go home to England to plead with the British Crown. The problem that Pennsylvania was having was that the colony could make legislation, but the Penn family could overturn anything they wanted because of the Royal Grant and Proprietary Charter. Here's an excerpt from the charter. And we do likewise give and grant unto the said William Penn and his heirs to his and their deputies and lieutenants full power and authority to appoint and establish any judges and justices, magistrates and officers whatsoever, for what causes soever, for the probates of wills, and for the granting of administrations within the precincts aforesaid, and with that power soever, and in such form as the said William Penn or his heirs shall seem most convenient. Also to remit, release, pardon, and abolish, whether before judgment or after, all crimes and offenses whatsoever committed within the said country against the said laws. So basically, if anything happened, if the Penn family did anything, they had the authority to change laws, to pardon anyone that they wanted. But within the few years that Franklin was there, of course, the British did nothing about it, and Franklin returned to Pennsylvania in 1762. Now, he did do other missions to England. For example, in 1764, Franklin embarked with Richard Jackson to England, both being as agents of Pennsylvania. The public was not pleased with how the colonies were being governed. In a letter written to Jackson before they left, Franklin stated that the Assembly think themselves much misrepresented and very ill-used by General Amherst. The colonists were not happy with the provisional government that was set up in the colonies. Many of the unease was due to acts such as the Sugar Act, the Militia Act, and the Stamp Act. The Sugar Act was taxation on sugar that did not please the North American merchants. The Militia Act had to do with the government of Pennsylvania trying to allow for the creation of a militia, but it kept being put down. The Stamp Act was arguably the worst. When referring to what needed a stamp, the act stated, "And for and upon every paper commonly called a pamphlet, and upon every newspaper containing public news, intelligence, or occurrences, which shall be printed, dispersed, and made public." So one of the examples of the The Stamp Act was like for a deck of cards. Each individual card would have had to been stamped, which was pretty ridiculous at the time. And once again, this mission was ultimately unsuccessful. So, after the outbreak of the war, Benjamin Franklin, as well as two other people, Silas Deane and Arthur Lee, were chosen to embark on a diplomatic mission to France in the year of 1776. Their goal was to gain aid from the French for the American cause. They were to be representatives of the Continental Congress and the newly formed United States of America. Their official titles were Commissioners to France. So, Franklin's journey. After a 30-day voyage led by Loire Captain Wicks and a few encounters with the British, Benjamin Franklin arrived in Quiberon Bay, a port in France, in December of 1776. He then arrived in the city of Nantes. In a letter to John Hancock dated December 8, 1776, Franklin stated, "I find it is generally supposed here that I am sent to negotiate, and that opinion appears to give great pleasure, if I can judge by the extreme civilities I meet with from numbers of the principal people, who have done me the honor to visit me." From his first encounters with the French people, Franklin implied that they were for the American cause. They seemed to already know why he was in France, on a mission to negotiate with the French monarchy in favor of the United States. Franklin still was cautious, though, to let his reasons for being there be known, because he was not sure if the king wanted his business made public. When Franklin arrived in Paris in late December of 1776, him, along with Silas Deane and Arthur Lee, made an appeal to the Comte de Vergennes, who was basically the French foreign minister. They sent the French court a formal letter pleading for aid, explaining the difficulties that the United States faced against the better equipped British. They also proposed an agreement of amity between the two nations. On January 13th of 1777, Franklin and the commissioners to France received an answer from his most Christian king, Louis XVI. The king explained that it was difficult for the French to provide aid so openly to the colonies, because it undoubtedly would have negative consequences for France. He explained that France was very limited in how they could openly help the colonies, because of the stipulations of agreements that the French made with Great Britain. The king also stated that the French could help the American cause only by providing secret assistance for the time being. An interesting fact about Franklin's mission was that he was able to obtain a loan of 2 million livres for the war effort. He told Congress that it was from the French aristocracy, but later revealed that it was a secret loan actually directly from the king himself. The Committee of Secret Correspondence acted as the middleman between Benjamin Franklin and the Continental Congress. Throughout his time in Paris, Franklin wrote many letters to the committee explaining everything that went on in Paris. For example, Franklin would write to the committee explaining what news there was in Europe about the war in the colonies and how Europeans perceived it. Likewise, the committee would relay news of the war and how well the Continental Army was doing. But the most that was talked about was how much supplies and money were needed for the American cause. On February 6, 1778, both the Treaty of Amity and Commerce and the Treaty of Alliance between America and France were signed. This historic moment was the completion of the diplomatic mission that Benjamin Franklin, Silas Deane, and Arthur Lee were sent to France for. The Treaty of Amity and Commerce was important because it guaranteed a strong and lasting peace between the United States of America and France. It allowed for both nations to engage mutually, not to grant any particular favor to other nations in respect of commerce and navigation. Benjamin Franklin continued his work as a commissioner to France after succeeding in the negotiations of the Treaty of Amity and Commerce and the Treaty of Alliance between the United States and the nation of France. Himself, as well as Silas Deane and Arthur Lee, continued to work as representatives of the United States to the French court and other European countries. One of the most important accomplishments of Benjamin Franklin, besides the treaties between the United States and France, was the negotiations for peace between the United States and Great Britain. He successfully helped negotiate peace between them on September 3, 1783. In conclusion, his diplomatic mission to France was crucial to winning the war against Great Britain. Although Franklin faced many political roadblocks trying to convince the French monarch to help the United States only, that did not stop him from getting secret assistance all the same. He pushed for more free commerce between the two nations, but it only went so far because of agreements made between the British and the French. His work persuading the French to sign the Treaty of Amity and Commerce changed that. One of the most important outcomes of the treaty made it so American ships could be protected by French convoys when sailing out to sea. His success in getting King Louis XVI to sign the Treaty of Alliance brought France openly into the war. The United States may have never been successful in gaining independence from the English if it were not for the work of Benjamin Franklin gaining France as an ally. Thank you for watching my presentation.